Hi, I'm going to use this drum machine, the DM1, to show you the basics of rhythm. What you see here are the kick and the snare lit up on beats 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. In most Western popular music, you're going to hear the kick and the snare on the 1, 2, 3, and 4. You'll also hear them in other places, and the way to understand where those other places are is by thinking about the other ways that this measure can be divided up. Here we have the measure divided up in 4, in quarters, and here we have the measure divided up in eighths. What I've just lit up is the hi-hat, and now we're going to hear 8 beats on the hi-hat, or 8 hits on the hi-hat, going along with those other 4 beats. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. We can also further divide the measure into sixteenths. Sounds like a disco beat or something. Going back to our division into eighths, you'll also hear the kick or the snare being played on the eighths as well as the quarters. So here's the kick being repeated on the eighth following the beat. You'll also hear the kick sometimes on the eighth preceding the quarter beat. Similarly, the snare can be repeated after or before. When we use the positions in between the eighths, in an eighth pulse like we have here on the hi-hats, so using the 16th there, for example, this is what's called syncopation. Take a listen to this. So you should hear that it sounds a bit funky, and that's because syncopation is used in a lot of funk music and a lot of dance music in general. As well as adding, say, a bass hit on a 16th between 2 eighths, you can also move a snare hit over a little bit onto the adjacent 16th, add a bass hit here, again, what you're hearing is something that sounds typical of funk music. Here I'm adding an open hi-hat instead of the closed hi-hat. So this is being done on the 8th note just before going back to the 1. And it's one way of signaling the 1 by having an open hi-hat. Other things you'll hear are rolls and so on. Lots of that happens in the period coming up to the 1 to signal the return back to the beginning of the measure. I've switched displays so that I can show you a division of the measure into 12. Each beat is divided into 3. This would usually be notated in 6/8 time, but it could also be notated in 4/4 time by using triplets for the groups of 3. This is what it sounds like. You might be getting some sense already that this is the kind of rhythm that's used in a lot of rhythm and blues, and jazz. It becomes even more evident if we take out these guys. There is just playing a typical blues riff on the guitar, which should give you a better idea how this is the shuffle that you hear in a lot of blues music. It's interesting to compare the shuffle rhythm to the straight 8 rhythm that we heard before. So what I mean by straight 8s is if we move these over a little bit, they're now dividing the beats evenly in half. As rock and roll music developed, it started using straight 8s more frequently than the shuffle rhythm that you just heard. Again, to hear the difference. And modern music uses a lot more of the straight eighths, the straight sixteenths than the shuffle rhythms. But who knows? Maybe swing and shuffle will come back into fashion again sometime soon. And it's worth emphasizing that the idea of using the triplets in a 4/4 time, or what we might call 6/8 time, you're going to hear these sorts of repeating triplets in all sorts of music. Music with kinds of classical influences like progressive metal, and various kinds of electronic music will use these repeating triplets as well.